Dearest listeners, book babes and book bros, I'm Rachel. I'm part of the Witlit Women, and I'm here today with two special guest appearances. My co-host, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I am a reader from Colorado. I will read anything and everything I can get my hands on.
All right, thanks for joining us, Hannah. And then our special guest appearance, our author today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jessica Disciacca, and I'm the author of the Dark Throne series and also the series Witches of Triora.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Are you ready to babble?
Absolutely.
Okay, I
So
will.
ready.
Great. We're going to put 5 minutes on the clock and get started. Okay. So the first question is, what inspired you to write your stories?
So the Dark Thrones series was actually the second series I've ever written, and that was during COVID. And I've always been a fan of the Fae world. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. That was my introductory. And then with books, it became Anne Rice, and then of course Sarah J. Maas, and all of the rest followed. And so I've always been a huge fantasy, like extrovert about it. I love talking about it. I love exploring it, watching the movies, being involved in all of the events, the wonderful events that are going around the world at this time. And yeah, so I would just I got inspired by also history. A lot of, the Fae and things like that are based off of like Norse mythology and things like that. And I'm a huge history nut. And so, if I get inspired either by something I've read or learned about or even some movies that I've watched.
Amazing.
That is awesome. I also am a huge fantasy fan. So Star Wars was your intro.
It was.
That's me too. That's like I call it my Roman Empire.
Yes, for sure. I know I was in 1999 when the Phantom Menace came out. I was in line dressed up as Amidala and whatnot and waiting in line for those tickets when you used to have to wait in line, to get your theater seats. So definitely a diehard fan from a very young age.
Yeah. Is your series complete?
Witches of Triora, that's my urban fantasy series. That is complete at 3 books. Dark Throne series is my award-winning series and probably my bestseller, and that has 5 books total. And so I'm currently in the middle of writing the fourth book. I've kind of like diverted a little bit, and I've taken on a side project that I've been passionate about since I was like 18. So it's gonna be fictional fantasy horror. So I'm kind of like just taking a little break and doing something a little bit fun. But yeah, that's on the docket to finish at 5 books for that series.
Awesome.
That's so exciting. What is your process for writing?
So I love that question because I'm actually a type A personality. And so usually that means like, I would have my bulletin board up and like having all my sticky notes order wise, and that's actually complete opposite on how I write. So the characters kind of take place like I get a idea in my head and then I metagame it out, whether that be at night when I'm going to sleep, I'll kind of run the script through my head and play it like a movie or something of that nature. And then when I get to the writing process, basically the kind of characters for me take over. And they basically don't shut up until I get them on the page. So I like to call myself a Stephen King writer because he'll write for 2 weeks straight until it's complete. And that's kind of how I am, where I can't stop until all those ideas are on the page. So Dark Throne series has been really easy for me to kind of go through and just write as I go and then go back and edit and tweak a few things. Witches of Trura, since there was nothing like it, fantasy's already built for the most part. So I had that foundation with Dark Throne, but Witches of Triora, there was nothing like it. I created an entire new magic system and world and it combined a lot of entities that you read about. And so that one took a little bit longer for me to metagame out. But yeah, usually I kind of play it through my head and work out all the kinks like a movie.
That's awesome.
I love how
Um,
you like the movies and like it's also your writing is very similar to a movie, the way that you picture that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hannah, I interrupted you.
that's okay. No, I was just gonna say the same thing. It's kind of like you're watching a movie in your head and then have to get it down on paper immediately. Is that how it is for you?
Yes, or like I don't know if you guys have ever like had that situation where like you have a dream and you're like, oh, that's such a good idea. I'm gonna write that down. And then you're like, no, I'm too tired. And you go to sleep and it's gone. Like I don't want that to happen to me either. So I make sure to definitely get all those, details out when I can. I think that's why I become that obsessive writer to where I don't stop until, at least the first draft is somewhat complete.
That's awesome. Can you tell us any secrets about your series that no one else knows, or is it a
Witches
lock
of
and
True,
key?
yeah, Witches of True is pretty much done. I'm an author though too, where I'm kind of like a Game of Thrones author, where I like to break your heart. So people are,
Yeah,
realistically, like people die in situations, and not everybody makes it out alive or unscathed, and not everybody ends up together. So I definitely like to make it more realistic. I think that as I get older and more mature in my writing, that's where writers lose me when everything's always a happy fantasy fairy tale ever after type of situation because that's not real life. So yeah, Witch of Triora is done. Like we can talk about that one, but Dark Throne series, I'm debating. I'm right now. I'm talking with my editor because I'm debating on killing off a very main character at the last book, and so it's going to be detrimental. So I'm like, am I going to really piss people off to where they don't want to read me again, or is it going to be one of those traumatic events that stick with you, but you remember, the author in the book series because of it?
Yeah, that's kind of like you said, that's it's fantasy world, but that's a real life thing that happens. And I think, there's connections people can make to losses like that too.
Absolutely.
Yes, I love that kind of like the storyline that goes along with those. Like Game of Thrones is very similar, right? Like you were talking about that kind of being similar to it. And I think those oh, our time's up. I think those are like very interesting storylines to be able to see like the loss and the grief that comes along with that. And we feel that as readers. We get to feel that grief. And I think that's it sounds morbid, but I think it's really cool to be able to connect with characters so much, right? So
Definitely. Like, well, psychology states that, the more emotional experiences, like if you, long-term memory will click in if you have an emotional response to that situation or memory. That's when long-term, memory kicks in. So if there's no emotional response, or if it just made you feel kind of good, you're going to forget it. But if it completely destroyed you, you're going to remember that one because you're like, ah, that really, took a chunk out of me.
that makes so much sense, especially with like I don't know, in the book talk world where everybody's like, this book destroyed me. Like we want it to destroy us. We want to remember it. We want to feel that. Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah, our 5 minutes is up. So we'll just continue to ask questions and kind of go on for the next few minutes. We usually cut off around 15, kind of keep your day going. So we'll just keep going.
All right.
So um you said you had an editor. So how much of your own editing do you do?
I have noticed that I grow with my editor is actually one of my very close friends. She started her own editing business and moved out to Las Vegas and is doing her thing. And with every manuscript I get back, I learn so much. And so like for me, even like going back to like Dark Throne series was the Awakening of the Dark Throne was my first book I published. And going back and I'm like, oh, if I could rewrite it, I would change, you know what I mean? Like just my verbiage and my sentence structure. And so I'm getting better. I feel like, and I love it because, AI right now, people are going crazy with the M dash. And I love the M dash when I add that in versus like two, three periods or whatever. Like I use that a lot. And so yeah, just like learning about that. Like before I started editing, I didn't really know what an M dash was for. And she explained it to me and I'm like, oh, perfect. I can use it for, this influx of emotion or excitement and yeah. And so I'm getting better at it. And like one of my last scripts she's like, I really didn't have a whole lot to like critique you on as far as this and that goes. And it's just that little stuff though, to where I think I can read it 14 times and I'm still gonna miss something. I think the rule is like with editing, you're gonna, get 95% of the manuscript correct, but there's always gonna be that 5% margin. And even in like, top three publishing housing books and stuff like that, I'm still finding errors in their books. So it is what it is, and everybody has a different kind of take on it. But I'm doing editing, I'm getting better at it, but I definitely always want a second or third pair of eyes on my manuscripts before they go to print.
I think that's very fair. And I think you're right. Like even, indie or trad, I see errors in different writing styles. So it's like it's more about the experience than it is being perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wish people would kind of get off the burning authors at the stake for errors. I'm like, you go try to write $120,000 or not 120 word script and you tell me that it's perfect after. That's not going to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think they need to stop burning authors at the stake for a lot of things.
That would be nice and make the world a lot
Yeah,
easier and happier for sure.
yeah, authors are people, not machines, and that's where the heart of the story comes from a lot, is that, they're human beings too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like in my stories, like I know mine get pretty dark and whatnot, but like each book of mine, I've kind of like used that book and that story or that character to heal at a part of like traumatic part of my life. And so that's like another thing that you always have to just kind of keep in mind, to where I feel like if you really read a story that resonates with you, or you have an emotional part in it of some sort, I'm now asking myself as a writer and a reader, like, oh, is this something the author personally went through and things like that? Because I mean, I had a traumatic scene in my first book, and somebody was like, "Oh, she just put that in there to be dramatic." And I'm like, "No, like I actually went through this. These were the things I told myself to get through it." Like, again, it's just one of those, things to where people are going to critique. It is what it is, and you got to be ready for those arrows to shoot your way.
So why did you choose the path for publishing that you chose? So like there's always this camp of indie versus trad. So
Mhm.
what was your thought process behind it?
So I was actually traditionally published in the beginning. I was with a publishing house, and I was so excited because I had always queried. I didn't really know. Like I knew people publish on Amazon and things like that, but I was like, I don't want to learn all that. And so I went ahead and signed with them at the beginning of 2024, like the first week of January, and they released my first two books of my series, so Awakening the Dark Throne and The Vessel. And with them, I just learned a lot. I was for me, it was honestly, it came down to like how much effort and how much worth are you putting in into me because I was the one that was out there advertising myself and like getting all my signings and traveling for it and doing all these things. And I was catching errors and things of that nature. And at that point, like, promises were being broken. And so at that point, I just decided for myself and for my career just to take a step back. I had learned so much already by fixing the publisher's errors. That I was like, I'm pretty confident to where if I just take a week and sit down and really like study this stuff and watch a bunch of YouTube videos and talk to people that do it, like I can figure it out. And so actually I started my own publishing house, Dark Flame Publishing. And so I have a marketing and an editor and things of that nature. And I'm an art major, so I knew how to do the graphic design side of it with Adobe and things of that nature. And we're piloting it, and hopefully within 3 years we can help out other authors as well and give them that experience to where it's beneficial to where even if they're wanting to learn, we can teach them how to self-publish. But if not, they have something, stable to fall back on, and they're not going to get screwed in the way I did. Because at that point, numerically, it became an issue because I was seeing like $300 a month, and my publisher was keeping 3,000. I'm like, how is that at all? Where I'm out here peddling the book, like how is this at all? So yeah, it wasn't a good fit for me. I think it's definitely a difference depending on what publisher you go with, and that's why like when I talk to people that are looking to query their or manuscripts, I'm always like, you need to do research, see who they publish, how their ratings are, things of that nature, because there's a lot of indie publishers out there, but they're going to do more harm than good in the end because they're going to waste your time, your resources, they're going to ruin your debut, and that's really how to kick your book out the gate and really get that traction underneath you is to make sure that you have a great debut. And so, yeah, definitely learned a lot by getting burned. And so, definitely want to make that experience better for authors and readers and just in general. And so, that was something that, like, I was stressed about when I decided to leave them. But overall, it's been better for me because I'm a control freak, anyways. So, I get to kind of take ownership and control of my books and where they go.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that absolutely. And then just like the passion behind it too. Like you're not just doing this to prove a point, you're doing it because you care. And I think that's incredible. And it's such a draw into your company.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So we are closing in on time. I just realized we only have like a minute left. Is there anything that you wanted to tell your readers or the listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you like traditional fantasy and you are like an SJM, fan and things of that nature, the Dark Throne series, a lot of people say it's more like a Brothers Grimm version. I took a lot of actually historical references from Norse mythology and actually all the mythological backgrounds and religions and put that in that book. And so that one you get multiple points of view. You get to hear from a lot of different characters. There's different spice levels based on the character going through, and you get to see a lot of fun things. And it's a new spin on bringing all these mythological worlds together. And then my other series, Witches of Triora, that one is like nothing I've ever read. At least I love the witchy, vibes. I was a huge Charmed girl back in the day.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I created an entire new magic system based off of the Maiden Mother Crow, who was Aradaya. And so you're gonna see some Wiccan religion mixed with Catholicism, which mixed with the seven deadly sins. And those brothers have hilarious banter. That's like everyone's favorite aspect of that book once you get into book 2 and 3 is that banter between all the seven deadly sins who are the princes of hell. And I wrote them as the first fallen angels that fell with Lucifer from heaven. So there's a lot of the actual historical references in my books because I like to make those personal connections. And like to go back and like kind of Google it and things of that nature. But yeah, just get ready. If you pick up one of my books, get ready to have your heart ripped out in a good way. It's nothing too detrimental. I'm not going to leave you bleeding on the floor for too long. But yeah, definitely a ride for sure.
If I wasn't sold before, I am now. This is exciting.
Right.
So that's amazing. Everyone go out and grab these books. Um, and then Hannah, is there anything you wanted to add before we close out today?
I agree. I am so sold. I love a good dynamic, ups and downs, epic scope. So I am very excited.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for joining us today, guys, and I appreciate you guys coming in. So, all right, have a good night,
Absolutely.
day,
Thank you for having me.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.